Hi, this is an intro to Chapter 2, How You Play the Game. The Chapter 2 for How You Play the Game shows the mistakes that women often do in playing the game. So one by one, I'll try to read them up. To introduce Chapter 2, here we go. A friend and I were discussing the Olympics soon after the closing ceremony. I remarked that I love seeing people achieving the goals they had strived for their entire lives and performing at the top of their games. She, on the other hand, said she didn't like how competitive it was, with constant reminders of how many medals each country had won. It's the Olympics, I blurted out in disbelief. They're supposed to be competitive. A few days later, I was playing online Scrabble and my opponent got 2 bingos in a row. A bingo is when you use all your letters to get bonus points, which is somewhat unusual at my level of play. The person typed, "I'm sorry." I immediately typed back, "May I ask if you're a woman or if you're a man or a woman?" The reply didn't surprise me. Of course, it was a woman. I've never had a man apologize for legitimately gaining an advantage. Many women, especially those who grew up in the 1960s and 1970s, never had the opportunity to participate in competitive sports. Until relatively recently, few of us served in the armed forces, attended military academies, or participated in other activities that required us to play to win. As a result, we don't know how to play the game, let alone play within bounds, but at the edge, which will be explored further a little later in this chapter, and play to win without feeling apologetic or guilty. Worse yet, many women view the whole idea of the game of business as something unpleasant, dirty, and to be avoided at all costs. Let's start with the most important lesson. Business is a game, and you can win it. As a matter of fact, women are born to win this game. I spend half of my time working with men, teaching them to be more like women. Of course, I don't put it quite that way, or I would be out of business. I coined the term feminization of leadership to describe the ways in which today's workforce responds more positively to stereotypically feminine behavior than to masculine ones. I talk to men about the importance of things like listening, collaborating, motivating, seeing the human side of their staff. These factors contribute to what's known as EQ, and EQ is the sine qua non for workplace success. On top of that, it's been shown that women exceed men in 4 out of 5 EQ factors, including self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Women and men are equal on the 5th factor, self-motivation. Whether women do these things because they've been taught the behaviors and have had a lot of practice at them or because they come naturally really doesn't matter. To win the game of business, you need to capitalize on your high EQ. The areas in which women often aren't quite as skilled as men include knowing where the imaginary boundaries of the workplace playing field are, getting into the game, and understanding the unspoken rules for winning the game. Of all the coaching tips in this book, the following are the most difficult for women to incorporate into their corporate skill set. Many of the suggestions are counter to everything we learned growing up. Resist the urge to skip the hard stuff. If you don't play, you can't win. Mistake 1. Pretending it isn't a game. The workplace is exactly that, a game. It has rules, boundaries, strategies, winners, and losers. Women tend to approach work more like an event, a picnic, concert, fundraiser, where everyone comes together for the day to play together nicely. In our desire to create win-win situations, we unknowingly create win-lose ones. Where are the losers? Playing the game of business doesn't mean you're out to cause others to fail, but it is competitive. It means you are aware of the rules and develop strategies for making them work to your advantage. An interesting scenario played out that underscores this uniquely feminine phenomenon. The women's softball teams of Western Oregon University and Central Washington University were competing toward the end of the season when a senior who had never hit a home run during her college career came up to bat and smacked it over the fence. As she was running toward first base, she tore a ligament in her leg and could no longer run. Knowing her situation and not wanting to deprive her of one last chance for a homer, players from the opposing team carried her around the field to touch each base, allowing her to have officially hit a home run. When was the last time you heard this happen in any sport where men were playing? To the contrary, as a male Nestle executive said to me, when a man's friend wins, a little piece of him dies. Although I think it was a nice thing to do, and maybe even the right thing to do under the circumstances, women also need to understand when playing to win is more important than being nice and putting the needs of others first. The ability to differentiate when collaboration that will yield maximum results is needed from when going flat out to win should be employed moves you from nice girl to winning woman. Barbara is a workplace example of someone who didn't understand the game. She worked as a director of marketing in the banking industry for many years. She reached the point in her career where she was so successful that she was sought after for senior positions by a number of companies. She selected one in the specialty chemicals business, where she entered as a vice president. When she was referred to me for coaching, she could not understand why she was floundering. Everything that had worked for her in banking failed her in her new position. Her polite, laid back way of managing and interacting with others was now seen as weak and indecisive. Not understanding that this was a new ball game, Barbara played the new game by the old rules and found herself facing the possibility of failure for the first time in her career. In a more competitive business or when working for someone who values competition, you've got to play to win, or you'll soon find yourself on the bench. Not only is business a game, but the rules of the game change from organization to organization, and from department to department within an organization. What works with one boss may not work with the next one. Keeping your eye on the ball is essential when it comes to winning the game of business. Now let's move to coaching tips for mistake number 1. Learn to play chess. It will help you develop a more strategic mind when it comes to winning games. Second, make a list of the rules of the game at your workplace. Remember, these are usually unspoken expectations for how fast trackers should behave. Rather than completing it in one sitting, you may have to compile the list gradually as you observe interactions, memos, and meetings in a different way than you have in the past. Examples of rules in some workplaces include don't disagree with the boss, everyone works at least 10 hours of overtime, being polite is more important than being right, deadlines must be met no matter what the circumstance, budgets are strictly adhered to, the customer always comes first, and so on. As you make your list, begin thinking about how your behavior compares with the expectations. Third, read Hardball for Women, Winning at the Game of Business by Pat Heim and Susan Goland. It will help you better understand the male business culture and how to use it to your advantage. Among the tips provided are ways to be assertive without being obnoxious, how to engage in smart self-promotion, and methods to display confidence even when you feel powerless. Fourth, identify a mentor, someone who is successful at playing the game and with whom you can openly discuss the rules in your organization. It's often helpful to have both a man and a woman as mentors, as each will have invaluable guidance for our success. And finally, if you don't currently play a sport, start. It doesn't matter whether it's tennis, kickboxing, softball, or golf. Playing sports helps you learn the language of the game.